Welcome to the 24th episode of Tokyo Alumni Podcast. Today, our guest was born and raised in Tokyo, Japan. She attended the American school in Japan from kindergarten all the way to graduation. There, she developed a profound appreciation for global perspectives, community service, and leadership. Upon graduating ASIJ, she would attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. Throughout her time at the Academy, she has been a proud company mate and company commander of the C-2 Flying Circus, and an active member of the West Point flying team, ski patrol, CrossFit Black and Gold, Olympic weightlifting team, and Mukluk team. She branched into aviation in her final year as a cadet, commissioned as an officer in May, and will start flying school in August to become an Army aviator. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So I don't know why. So I don't know why I didn't say your name. Welcome to the podcast, Angie Marsh. So youngest guest so far, graduate of 2016.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Today we'll be talking a lot about the United States Military Academy at West Point. So quite a mouthful there. You know, why join West Point? You know, what is it like there? And it's very unique in the sense that people I know who have graduated international schools, not many go the military route. Would that be correct?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I think in my graduating class of 2016 from ASIJ, I only know of one other person, and she happens to be a really good friend of mine, Natalie Klein. She actually went the ROTC route. I'm pretty sure I'm the first one to go to West Point in like 8 years. Or like the person who went before me was 8 years before I guess unconventional sort of route for college from ASIJ.
At what point did you decide to make this decision? Because I think a lot of, you know, people's careers, especially people I've interviewed so far, there's sort of opportunities to deviate, you know, different majors and then go into a different career. But with the military, I mean, it's the military. You're not going to start, you know, an ice cream stand tomorrow or become a teacher tomorrow. So was there pressure to make this decision really early on, you know, as a high school senior?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Honestly, it was more like leaning towards on a whim kind of thing. Definitely no pressure. No.
When you, off air, I think you mentioned part of your influences was your brother.
Yeah, don't tell him that.
Involved.
So Ansel, my brother, is in the Navy. So in the military, like when you join, you've got two routes, right? You can become an enlisted soldier or for the Army, if you're in the Navy, a seaman, if you're in the Air Force, an airman kind of thing. But yeah, if you're in the Army, you can go enlisted or officer route, in the military. And that kind of goes across all service branches. So my brother went the enlisted route. Generally, like you do more cool stuff. You're like in the thick of it, whatever mission your service branch is. So like for the Army, it's like you're on the ground fighting and stuff. If you're in the Navy, you're on a ship or something. If you're in the Air Force, you know, maybe you're a mechanic or something. But so the enlisted route and the officer route. I chose the officer route, went to the academy before commissioning as an Army officer.
When you got there, you know, people hear about how rigorous it is and how intense it is. Do you feel like, you know, we're all connected now on SNS, social media. You saw your other graduates go to other schools, maybe some party schools. I mean, they're all party schools. You want to party, right? So do you ever kind of like feel like, wow, the experience here is very different, and like.
So you're asking me if I felt like I was missing out on the college experience?
Yeah, that it was maybe different, you know. And how did you feel about that?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, even before I like accepted my appointment, like I knew that it was going to be a different experience, and I was totally good with it. I knew that it was going to be challenging, and it delivered. It's definitely challenging, but I think the first 2 years were very different from my last 2 years at West Point. West Point's very unique in that they kind of like structure the academy, like the Corps of Cadets. So I guess like the equivalent of that would be like a student body of a school. They kind of structure it militarily from the get-go. So you're placed into units during the school year. And also during the summers, you get put into summer training assignments and things like that, where you're already kind of in a military structure. It starts from the very small level. If you're a squad would be 6 to 8 people maybe, and then it goes like platoon, where there's 4 squads, and then 4 platoons in a company, 3 companies in a battalion. Anyways, so it just like kind of goes on like that. It's very rigid, and you only get to interact with most of the time like those people in your company, and they're also the people that you live with. You're also like your freshman year, you're not allowed to be friends with any of the upperclassmen. So it's all kind of like a leadership experiment for the cadets. The plebes, the freshmen, we've got our own names for everything. They're kind of like the guinea pigs for the team leaders, who are the sophomores at school. And the team leaders are in charge of, 1 or 2 of those freshmen, those plebes. As you kind of like rise through the ranks, get a little bit older, get a little bit more experience with leadership, kind of start leading more and more people. And that's kind of how the structure of West Point goes militarily. And this is pretty consistent throughout the academic year, as well as like your summer training cycles. You're also restricted to a lot of things as an underclassman. As a plebe, you can't leave campus pretty much ever. You've got winter break, Thanksgiving leave, and spring break, and that's all you get. You also can't have cars until your second semester. I think it's March of your junior year. That's kind of different. You can't wear civilian clothes. So I don't know if you watched like a video of West Point or anything, but you can't wear, like pretty much everyone wears uniforms all the time. And as a plebe, you can't wear civilian clothes ever.
So when you say plebe, is that etymology of that word, from the Romans, or?
I mean, I guess so. Like they've West Point's just always called freshmen plebes. We have our own names for everything. It's kind of ridiculous, but the sophomores, we call them yucks or yearlings. The juniors are cows, and the seniors are firsties.
So it's quite rigorous. And I was reading online the other day about the different trainings, or what do you call tests, admission tests and whatnot. Sure. Is it true that you have to sit down and throw a basketball?
Okay, I think you're referring to the candidate fitness assessment to like get into West Point. So West Point kind of has its own way of doing everything. And the application process is also kind of follows that general rule. And you have to take a physical test, submit it into your application portal. And the basketball throw is one of the events in the fitness test. Yeah.
Really? It's just how far you can throw it, I guess, is the farther the better.
Pretty much.
Interesting.
I think it's supposed to be like kind of mimic the motion of like throwing a grenade. So it's like, how far can you throw the grenade sort of thing. One physical fitness test, we call it the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test, which is 2 minutes of as many push-ups as you can do and 2 minutes of as many sit-ups as you can do, and then followed by 2-mile run. That's the APFT, and we have to take that once a semester.
Do students ever, like if they fail that, they get kicked out of school, or are they put on some sort of probation?
Yeah, so if they fail the APFT, then they pretty much get put on restriction or get their privileges revoked. And it's more kind of severe as you, like depending on your class year. So if you're a plebe, like it doesn't really matter because you don't have privileges anyways. But if you're like a firstie, then you can't leave on the weekends. You can't wear civilian clothes. It's a little bit more of a bigger deal.
That's interesting. Yeah, so you have this rigorous system, right? You have the test every semester. I wasn't aware of that, actually. I thought it was just you get in and then maybe you can chill out a bit. But I guess there's no such thing.
It honestly gets harder and harder every year.
And then, so throughout this period, obviously to get in is already difficult. So you already have, very high achieving people, both academically and physically. Despite that, do you see a decent dropout, especially that first year where students are plebes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we get the most people drop out after their first year. And then a lot of people, again, drop out right before they begin their junior year. We have this thing called affirmation. We have an affirmation ceremony where you take an oath and basically commit the next 7 years of your life to the Army. So that's including 2 more years at West Point and then 5 years of service upon graduation. So a lot of people, you know, they've done 2 years of West Point, they've gotten a little bit of a taste of how it's going to go, and they decide that it's not for them. So then they transfer.
What's unique to West Point is because everyone goes into service. It's not like people, you know, start working at Sony or Goldman Sachs. Because they're serving the federal government, the tuition is free, right? As long as people serve. Is that true?
Yeah, so nobody pays tuition at West Point. So yeah, I guess monetarily, yes, it's free, but you kind of like offset that with your service time.
You know, for your bio, while you were there, it's sort of this laundry list of activities, right? From flying, patrol, CrossFit. So I think we'll start with the one we spoke off air about how to pronounce, but I don't know what it entails.
Yeah, Miklik.
What's Miklik?
So it is a conference. It's called the McDonald Conference for Leaders of Character, and in short, it's called Miklik. And this is basically a conference that brings together a very diverse group of undergraduate student leaders from all over the world and across the nation, with world-class senior leaders who act as mentors in a team-based experiential event that bolsters leadership skills, fosters critical thinking and collaboration, and develops potential strategies for addressing pressing global issues. So I just read the mission statement basically off the website. Forgive me, but it's a really unique event, and it happens in March every year. Unfortunately, because of COVID this year, it was canceled, which I'm still a little bit upset about. But it's sponsored through the Behavioral Sciences and Leadership Department, which was my department because I was a psychology major at school. It's just like such a cool event. Like we have leaders from every sector, such as in the Army, as well as like in the commercial sector. We had government officials and just like a ton of like very accomplished world leaders. And it's you kind of get into like small groups and have really good discussions, and you take a lot away from the conference. So I was just very involved in that. That's all.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like MUN in high school, kind of like
a little bit like that.
Do you feel like the opportunities are more abundant because it's in a much more controlled environment? And just sort of going off that, for example, I was at a big public school, 30,000 kids, and there just wasn't much opportunity to do anything. Like there were clubs, but
Gotcha.
Yeah, there just wasn't. But it seems like you were able to do all these things. So how were you able to get all the opportunities?
I think definitely in part like it's a comparatively smaller school. We only have like 1,000 people per class. So you know a lot of your classmates, and like you know what's going on around you, because we all like eat at the same time, and we have like all 4,000 of us, all of the cadets eat in like a 30-minute period at lunch, and we have like these mess hall slides, and so you can kind of like always see what's new, what's going on. You've got flyers all around school, and again, it's like a pretty small campus, and by word of mouth, you're always living with your company mates, and people talk, so you know what's going on around school.
The smaller school, was it? I think I read online 4,000 people in the whole school
total. Yeah, because I think you start with like 1,300 or something per class, and then because of the like low retention rate, we kind of like lose people over time. So it ends up being around 4,000.
Yeah, especially coming from private schools, international schools, I imagine that is a little bit easier to adjust to than going to these, mammoth schools with 30, 40,000.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of student demographics, what is the gender breakdown like there?
It's like 25% women, I'd say. It's increasing every year, but so it's like obviously majority male. Maybe it's like 80%, 20%. I'm not really sure what the statistics are right now, but yeah.
So how was that? I mean, being in the super minority.
Fine. I mean, like it's definitely a change with like, I think ASIJ is pretty 50-50, or at least that it seemed that way to me. And so I don't know, like you know, it's a culture shock when you get there at first. You go through 6 weeks of basic training, like cadet basic training, before you go into the school year, just so you are kind of assimilated to military life and like how things are going to go at West Point before you start your actual like education there. And so like that, all of that was just like a total like culture shock, because it's like, you know, I'm coming from Japan and I moved to the US, and not only did I just move to like a new country after living in Japan for 18 years, but it's like you're also joining the military and you're in a sea of like a very different demographic group. But I think honestly, like you kind of just get used to it. I'd say, so we also have like really small class sizes. And I think there's probably like maybe anywhere from like 12 to 18 people per class. And I just got very used to being like the only girl in my class or one of two. And it's, I don't know, you notice it, but it doesn't really affect anything. I think if you just like do your best, you try your best and like kind of put your best foot forward, and people treat you the way that you present yourself, I guess. Does that make sense? I don't know if that made any sense, but
yeah, that's unique though. That the 25% to 75 is it's. I think most colleges are like 55% girls now, so it must have been a very, very unique experience. And you mentioned the 12 to 18 people per class. So you guys really get your money's worth.
So you can't hide because it's all like seminar style. You literally can't hide. If you haven't done the reading, which like I hardly ever did, but I hope none of my instructors listen to this. But like, yeah, you can't hide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, apparently you didn't hide, but you didn't read. I think you're just saying that. I'm pretty sure you did all the reading. I was in a class of 300, I think was the biggest I was in, 300 or 400. Yeah, in that case, we have the opposite. I mean, you're hidden, whether you want to be or not. Yeah, I mean, the professors don't know your names, and you're there. You're just another body. Very unattractive part of any big, university, especially public schools.
Were all of your classes like that, or did you have like some that were smaller?
Yeah, that was the unfortunate structure, was that I did have smaller classes, but unlike the liberal arts schools where the professors actually work with you, every small class I had was run by a TA, like a GSI. We call them grad student instructors. I mean, they were great, but I just felt like as someone who's paying college tuition, you expect the professor to be teaching you, not someone trying to get their PhD. So in May, you finished your time at West Point, and you're starting flight school in August in Army Aviation. You mentioned off record there's 17 branches, and why aviation?
Why? Because it's the best. No, so I've always been drawn to like the world of aviation. My dad actually is kind of like an aviation nerd. We both recently got our pilot's licenses, so this was more of like a hobby like outside of West Point that kind of translated into what my career will be now. So my dad took me on an intro flight, which is like a 30-minute, just a really basic flight where you kind of just like go up in the air and kind of see if you like it or not. And that happened after my freshman year in college. And I just absolutely loved it. And then worked on getting my pilot's license for like on and off for the next 2 years or so. Finally got it, joined the flying team at school. And I've just always like had a passion for it, I guess. I knew I wanted to branch aviation from West Point because that's really the only branch that I knew I wanted to get into. I had like a couple second and third choices. They're all like combat arms. Like I really like kind of want to be in the action.
With getting this pilot license, so you said you got it together. What is that like? Because you kind of really casually said that, and I don't know many people that get pilot licenses. So is that kind of like an American thing? Is it easier to do in the States?
Yeah. My first couple of flights were actually at Yokota Air Base in Japan. So like you can do it. I think it's a lot more expensive in Japan. And since it's a smaller, more congested island, like it's probably harder to fly there as well. I'm not really sure. I don't have a whole lot of experience flying in Japan, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I got my license here in Ogden, Utah. There are probably more cows than people. I'm just kidding. But yeah, the airspace is very free, open, not a whole lot going on. So very different, slightly easier, I would say, and cheaper. So
that's interesting. And you also very sort of casually mentioned flying teams. You know, some people join the volleyball team, they join the soccer team.
Yeah.
Is there something unique to West Point? Like, who do you compete with? What exactly does that entail, a flying team?
The flying team at school was kind of divided into two different groups. And the first group is like kind of like the more competitive group. So people have their pilot's licenses already, like their private pilot's license. Some people have their instrument rating, which is kind of like the next step up. At minimum, you have your license and you can fly on your own kind of thing. And then the second group is people who are learning and trying to get their pilot's licenses or just like interested in learning more about aviation and flying. And for the first year, my junior year, when I joined, I was on that like second group because I didn't have my license yet. And I was just like kind of studying and flying here and there, but always with like an instructor. And then my senior year, I had gotten my pilot's license that summer going into senior year. So I was like officially on the team and you compete against like the other academies. I didn't get to do that this year. We were supposed to have a competition and Air Force, I think, was supposed to come, like the Air Force Academy and potentially the Naval Academy. But obviously because of COVID, things kind of got canceled and we didn't get to do that. But so you compete against the other academies, but there's also NIFA competitions, which are like for National Intercollegiate Flying Association or something. And you compete against different universities that have a flying program.
Interesting. So how this, hobby of yours became a profession or is becoming a profession. So
Yes.
you embark, I guess in a month or so, this Army aviation training. And so when that's all done, the posts that, you select, and this was something we briefly touched upon off record, you have some choices or do you submit your choices and they tell you where to go, or do they give you a bunch of options and then you choose?
So I told you, like, most of the people at West Point will branch something and then post later on in the year. So they already get their duty stations, their first assignment for 3 years or something. That's where they're going to be stationed. And for aviators, though, we have to go to flight school first, and that's in Alabama at Fort Rucker. So we go there first, and then once we select our airframe, because there's a couple different airframes that we can fly, once we select our airframe, we can then kind of choose where to go based on our class rank, so like how we did in flight school, as well as like what's available. So some flight classes, you can go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, or Fort Drum, New York, and like maybe those are your only two options. And then other classes, you can go to Hawaii or Carson in Colorado. You can go to, I don't know, what's another good post? Fort Campbell, Kentucky. It totally depends on like the needs of the Army when you graduate from flight school.
It's funny you mentioned sort of quote unquote good posts. So is there sort of within the military, because I have spoken to a few other people about this, like more coveted locations like Hawaii?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get much better than Hawaii. But yeah, you could be stationed literally anywhere. You can go international too. There's Germany, Japan, going home would be sweet. You can go to Korea, Italy. You can go to a lot of places.
So you have all these options, and I guess once you're in the system, you're in the system. And from there on, it's just sort of like you have a little bit more, I guess, agency in regards to where you'd want to go next.
You might have preferences, but the Army will usually be like, okay, you're going here next. And you'll be like, okay.
So there's just you really don't know, huh? You could end up in Kentucky or Hawaii.
Pretty much.
Wow.
There's a couple special programs though, again, like we talked about, like special operations and stuff like that. If you're going through a pipeline like that, you pretty much know where you're going to go because those schools are there.
So some people will make sort of these calculated decisions in order to get to more preferable posts.
Yeah, there are ways that you can kind of like, kind of swing it your way, but ultimately the Army is kind of in charge of where you go. They'll send you where they need you.
That's really cool, especially, me as an international school teacher, it's always exciting to see people travel around the world. And, there's just, you never know, right? You never know where you're going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
So I like to usually close up the podcast with having the guest speak for 1, 2, 5, 20, whatever minutes long about what is coming up in the next few years, next few decades. So I will hand over the mic to you figuratively. And just take it away, Angie.
So my service commitment is, I just graduated right from West Point. I commissioned as an officer in the aviation branch. I'm a second lieutenant now. And my service commitment, so for aviators, it's a little bit longer than the 5 years that you initially sign up for at the beginning of your junior year. So I will have a total service commitment of, I think, 6 to 7 years from now. And the reason it's a little bit longer than the 5 is because your service time doesn't start for aviators, it doesn't start until you're qualified in your airframe. So it's after flight school, your service time starts. So I will be in the Army for at least 6 to 7 more years. And that's exciting. I'm really excited to kind of join the force and start my Army career. After that, I have no idea. I could go to graduate school somewhere, business school, medical school. I don't know. We'll see. But I'll probably be working because I like being busy. And yeah.
That's exciting to know. And as you were mentioning earlier, you might be in Kentucky, right? You might be in Hawaii.
I could be literally anywhere. So
hopefully once COVID's done, you can always travel though, right? And
for sure. No matter where I am, hopefully any of the Tokyo alumni people come visit me and we will have a great time.
Yeah, and if maybe people have any questions to you, because I know ROTC, as you mentioned off air too, that some people do the ROTC route as colleges get more expensive. It's
my gosh, yeah. Wait, can I like?
Yeah. Let's throw in a plug. Yeah.
I
ROTC.
know that it's not a popular option, and honestly, I don't think that the college counselors at ASIJ, SASN, St. Mary's, whatever, they don't do a really good job of like putting that out there as an option for people. I think a lot of people like don't even cast like a glance at the academies, ROTC scholarships and stuff. But like, I feel like a lot of people, a lot of high schoolers right now are concerned about getting into schools. And I think a lot more, like in hindsight, obviously, this is like my perspective. What matters more is like your experience in whatever environment you end up in. And if you're like drowning in college debt, like, you'll be working a lot or finding ways to like kind of make ends meet and maybe not get as many opportunities as you would like to and like experience all the things that you can in university. And I was able to do pretty much everything that I wanted to. I was on the ski patrol, the CrossFit team, Olympic weightlifting team. Like I got to do a lot of different very cool things and not have to worry about money And I met some of the best people that I have ever met and probably will ever meet at West Point. So like, I just want to like put that out there as an option, because I know that like a lot of high schoolers don't even like, they're intimidated by it or something. And I would just say like, please go visit the academies. Like, it is such a good option if you're a US citizen, and even if you're not, like we have international cadets too. And if you want like a very adventurous like college experience that and you're able to accept the fact that it's not going to be like a normal college experience, and you're able to embrace it and just like dive headfirst into it, like please like go look at it. I know this is probably not for like a high school audience, but I just want to say that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's actually any audience at all, but it's but maybe if this eventually comes across, someone who is, in that position. My question, sort of follow up for the ROTC, is how many schools have the ROTC program?
Honestly, like majority. A lot of universities do. Like if you have, okay, maybe I'm just like saying things that are not based in fact or evidence, but if you have like 10 schools on your college list, chances are like half of those will have an ROTC program. It is a little bit more competitive when you do ROTC because you're competing for that scholarship, whereas like if you're at the academy, that's not a concern at all, because everyone there is technically, I guess, on scholarship. But such a good route. Oh my goodness.
So definitely at least check it out. At least check, does your school provide the option? And if it does, maybe give it a shot.
If you have any questions about the academies, I guess I'll say West Point, because I don't know, how the Air Force and Navy experience is. They're a lot softer than Army. I'll just say that. But like any questions about military stuff, like please contact me. My name's Angie Marsh. You can find me on Facebook or whatever.
Well, thank you for the generous offer, Angie, and hopefully some people take that up. As you said, it seems like it's really an attractive option. College tuitions are going to be like $30 million a year, probably by the time in 10 years. So that definitely is a big factor. And that just about concludes this 24th episode. So we're halfway through season 3. Again, thank you very much, Angie.
Congrats, Nick.
And best of luck at aviation school.
Thank you. Thank you so much.